Hi, my name is Richard Azerga from Microsoft. In this video, we're going to build a new Microsoft V2 connected service application. So this combines the consumer and commercial accounts into a single authentication process, and we're going to be able to call a single endpoint to connect to either Exchange Online or Outlook.com based upon the type of account that the user provides during the login. So the first step in creating one of these types of apps, one of these new V2 app model apps, is going to apps.dev.microsoft.com, and ultimately in here you can go and define one of these. So I'll go ahead and I'll sign in with maybe a work account, and what this will do is I can either sign in with like a Microsoft account, like a Live or Outlook.com type of an account, or I can use an organizational account that I might use in Office 365. So once I do that, I can come out here and I can define an application. A few important differences in these types of applications is, first of all, I don't have to go to individual places. I can go one centralized place to create these apps. Another key difference when I go into one of these is that there is no place to specify permissions. The permissions actually get passed in the V2 model as scopes through the token acquisition process. So we'll actually pass the permissions we want as different parameters when we go to get tokens. The other thing is we can actually define multiple platforms for the same app. So in the past, if I wanted to create an application that maybe had both a web interface and a native mobile interface, I had to define two separate applications, and that's no longer the case. I can do all of those in one application. So I've already created this. It's a Node.js application. It uses Express and handlebars. It's pretty basic. There's no other imports other than those. So let me go ahead and open this up in Visual Studio Code. We'll look at some of the key things, run it, and then you can grab it and do some of your own playing with it. So I'm going to first go into this file called auth helper, and what you'll see in here is I have some core app details defined at the top. So things like my client ID, my client secret, those are typical, right? We would typically see those in an application that connects to maybe the Office 365 APIs or some of the consumer services that Microsoft offers. I will point out that the secret is a lot shorter here, so that's one tip off to see that it's different. But the other key thing is, you notice I've defined some scopes, and I'll show you kind of all these scopes here. There's actually three, so we concatenate them with a little plus sign. But OpenID says we're going to allow you to sign in using a Microsoft account. The second one says I want read access to contacts. And then the final one says offline access. And ultimately what that is another change in this V2 app model is that refresh tokens aren't automatic. You actually need to say I want offline access so that I can get a refresh token and maybe have a longer term access without the user having to log in. Beyond that, it's very similar to what we've done in the past. So the first step of OAuth is to redirect the user to a specific location to log in and get an authorization code. So here is me building that redirect. So the key difference here is you notice in the core URL, I have a V2. So you can see that right here. There's that V2. And then I'm also, instead of passing a resource in this, I'm passing those scopes, those permission scopes. And actually, the app model is smart enough to know the resources that I'm actually going after based upon the scopes that I pass in. All right, so after I get an authorization code, so what that's going to do is take me to sign in, bring me back. The next step is I need to get the code that comes back, that authorization code, and get an access token with it. So that's the second function I have here, this little helper. If we look, it's basically going to perform an HTTP post to the V2 token endpoint, but I'm going to pass a bunch of parameters. And this is pretty similar to the V1 app model. I will do things like pass the client ID and the secret this time. I'm going to pass the code that I got, that authorization code. But again, instead of a resource, I'm passing the permission scopes. And again, the app model will be smart enough to know what resource I'm after. All right, the last thing here is because I did ask for offline access, which means it's going to give me a refresh token. I just have a quick little utility here that says, go get me a new token given that refresh token. So it's basically the same v2 token endpoint, but in this case, my grant type is refresh token, whereas before my grant type was authorization code. So that's it. I mean, this is pretty simple. If you look in my route file that I have here, ultimately, I'm coming in and I'm checking to see if I have a token that's cached. If not, I'm taking them to login. If I do have a token that's cached, I'm going to get a new token with it. I'm going to use that refresh token to get a new token. And then I'm just going to go and perform a query against contacts. The one special thing I'll say here is that it is possible that your Outlook.com or Hotmail account isn't enabled for this yet. So we're doing kind of a phased rollout to the consumer accounts. And so there's an important check that I'm doing here. You can see I'm looking for if there's an error that came back. And if the error code is mailbox not enabled for REST API, then I'm going to render my app a different way. And we'll see that because I actually have an account that's not been enabled. But ultimately, it's the exact same endpoint. That's the key here is I'm going to both commercial or consumer with the same endpoint. So let's go ahead and run this. I'll go ahead and launch this. And we'll go ahead and go into the start page. In this point, it's going to automatically kick me to login because I don't have a token that's cached. So we'll go ahead and sign in with a Microsoft account. So it'll bring me to sign in. I'll go ahead and provide an account here, sign in. Now, normally what you'll see is a grant screen that says we give you access, that this application wants access to these things. In this case, I've already used the app once, so it's not going to prompt me again. But you can see here, I get all my data back, and it has all my contacts. Now, that was with a Office 365 account, so an identity that's in Azure Active Directory. Let's do the same thing now with maybe an account that is a consumer account. So I'm going to sign in, but this time I'm going to use maybe an Outlook.com account that is for consumers. So as soon as I tab off that, it's going to take me to a different login screen here and have me sign in with that consumer account. Now again, there would normally be a consent screen that shows up, but in this case I've already used the app. So it's going to go ahead and skip that consent screen and bring me right back into the app. Now you see I'm getting a message that says the REST API is not supported for this mailbox. And again, that's just because this mailbox hasn't been migrated to support these new APIs. But anyway, this is it. Great, V2 application. You can download this off GitHub. And you can see how to actually do all those auth flows without any special libraries. You don't have to use, we don't have an 8-out updated for this yet. It's going to be coming very soon, but you don't necessarily need that to get started. Anyway, thanks for watching.